Hi, this is Mike Young with Noble Warriors. You're about to hear a message entitled Your 10 Most Important Financial Moves for 2013, presented by Randy Rowekamp. Randy is the state coordinator for Crown Financial Ministries. He lives in Midlothian, Virginia. This equipping workshop was part of the Iron Sharpens Iron Men's Conference hosted by Noble Warriors at Grace Church of Fredericksburg on Saturday, March 9th, 2013 in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I pray the message will challenge and encourage you as you walk with Christ and lead your family.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started because it's time to get started, and I want to make sure we have enough time to get through and answer any questions that you might have. And I think most of you heard this, but if you fill out this little piece of paper that was on your chair, I'm going to be raffling off this Your Money Counts book by Howard Dayton. It's a very good book. It'll help you. So, to give you that information, I'll do the raffle at the end here. My name is Randy Rowekamp. I am with Crown Financial Ministries, and I'm just thankful that you're all here. As I said before, you guys are an answer to prayer. I know I've been praying for this conference. I've been praying for Noble Warriors. I've been praying for all of them that will come, not only just the ones that come to this session, but for all of them. And as Mike said, to hopefully find a stake in the ground. I'm going to talk about maybe even some extra stakes that you might want to put in the ground. But some things to take action on when you get back home. So let me open this in prayer, and then we'll get started. Lord, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for this time together. Lord, we thank you that your word contains so much about money and possessions. And Lord, we know you put that word in the Bible because you knew that money and possessions were going to vie for our attention of you. And Lord, you are faithful. You are our provider. And Lord, we thank you for that. And Lord, so we just pray you would bless this time together. And Lord, we pray all these things in your Son's name, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Okay, well, as I said, I'm Randy Rowekamp. I've been with Crown now for about 6 years. I had been working in a corporate job, not related to finances or anything, and I retired from there, and then I got involved with Crown. And the reason I'm so excited about Crown and what it teaches is my wife and I had kind of lived what they teach. We didn't know that. We didn't learn about Crown until 2006. But as we look back on what God had shown us, how faithful God had been to us and our family, and we saw what Crown was teaching, we got very, very excited. We first started off, my wife and I, just helping people one-on-one. But then we learned more and more about Crown. And then, like I said, when I retired, I applied to be a field representative for them. So I'm the field representative for Virginia and West Virginia now. And what I always do is like to tell people what Crown isn't. Then I'll tell you a little bit more what it is. We don't sell financial products or services. I'm not allowed to promote or sell financial products and services. But what I do is represent Crown and teach and help teach God's financial principles. So what we are is we are an educational ministry, and we have tools. Crown's just a tool. We have tools for the church to use. It's administered by the church. Other than our seminar, everything that we have can be administered by a local church. And so I have some of our materials at the table downstairs. I have some extras of a few of those. Those I can sell if you're interested in any of the books or things like that. But I'd like people to understand that we're not about capital campaigns and things like that. What gets me up in the morning and keeps me charged is guys like you that are interested to see what does God have to say about this topic that's so important. So you have the handouts. I did have one slide last night, but it just kind of, you'll see it, I'll point it out when we get to it, just is kind of like a road marker for us. So you have the handout, there's room to take notes, and what the topic again is 10 most important moves, financial moves. So as I go through here, as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a lot of other topics I talk about. So if there's something in there that you say, that should be something I should pay attention to, or I think I can work on in 2013, just put a check mark on it. And if you don't get 10, that's fine. If you have more than 10, that's fine. But then when you get home, kind of prioritize that and figure out what is the most important thing out of this list that I should work on. So I would encourage you to work on some of this. What we're going to do is I'm going to go through the biblical perspective for managing money. And as I said before, you know, the thing that I've found out is a lot of Christians get in financial trouble because they make decisions based on what they hear on the radio, they hear on TV, they see in the paper. You know, it's pretty much market. Newer car, newer home, best clothes, you know, all these things. The world just lures us into that. And then we make bad financial decisions. And what we want to do here is get some biblical perspectives that will help us to make decisions from a biblical point of view. I will be going through ideas for effective money management, and we're going to take you through from, you know, the first things first, which is really having a spending plan, all the way through to retirement and investing and things like that. And again, I will not be recommending any financial products or services, you know, buy this mutual fund or that. We don't do that. But we will give you the biblical basis for doing those kind of activities. So there's resources you can use. There's going to be a slide about that. I'm going to point out a few here today as we go through it. That's my name at the bottom there, and that is the website the Crown provides me. So if you ever decide you wanted to order a book or anything from Crown, if you would go through that website, I'd appreciate that, because that recognizes me as the source for that sale. So okay, I have a permission statement in here. That title that I'm using, your 10 most important financial moves for 2013, actually came from the 2012 December issue of Sound Mind Investing. No, I didn't plagiarize. You're not going to get a book report of what this is, okay? But some of the principles I did use, and they augment what Crown does anyway. So that's where that came from. They are the best-selling Christian financial newsletter. They have a website, and so again, I'm not recommending it, but I do want to make you aware of some things that are that can be very, very helpful. And Mike was talking about the drawing, so that card that you have in the bag, make sure you fill that out for the drawing. I'm going to be giving him one of these Sound Mind Investing handbooks. This is an excellent handbook. Goes through all the basic, the terminology, what everything means, method, the whole process for dealing with money. It's a very, very good handbook, so I'd recommend that. And the other thing they wanted me to mention is that these sessions are being recorded, and I believe they have some of them, they make it available for sale today, but I think you can order it and get it later. So I just wanted to bring that up. So the first place we want to start is these biblical perspectives to manage money. And so these are 5 things that are very, very important and really help you to get this whole thing in perspective. And so the first thing is that God is the owner of everything. And in 2 Chronicles 29:11 and 12, it says, "Everything in the heavens and earth is yours, O Lord, and this is your kingdom. You are the ruler of all mankind, and in your hand," I get confused there, "and power and wealth come from you alone. And your hand controls power and might, and it's your discretion that men are made great and given strength." So God owns everything. Everything that we have came from him. And that is the key element of being a good steward, is to recognize that. And the first time I went through a Crown class, my paradigm shift went from I'm being a good steward of my things to being a good steward of his things. And that was a huge change. So that's the first place we have to go. We hear this all the time, but we've got to internalize this idea that God owns everything. And as the owner, he has some responsibilities that he's taken on himself that he gives to us, and that is that his ownership, that he is in control of everything, and that he provides everything. He knows everything we need, and he promises in his words to meet our needs. He doesn't promise to meet our wants, but he does promise to meet our needs. So we really have to remember who's in control. The second thing is that we are God's managers, and that's where this term steward comes from. And in 1 Corinthians 4:2, it says, "Expected in a steward that he be found faithful." And so what God wants us to do is be faithful in the little things and be faithful in the large things. And so And that's with everything that we're given. Not only our money and our possessions, but our job. He wants us to be faithful in that. In our family, he wants us to be faithful in that. Topic today in this whole conference today is be faithful as a man. So he's expecting us to be faithful, and he's interested in everything that he's given us. So that's why we want to be a good steward, and we want to be found faithful. The contentment is in Philippians 4:11 through 13. And what Paul says there is, he says, I have learned to be content. So contentment is learned. It isn't something we're born with. Anyone in here is a father knows that, when you have your child, and if not the first word, one of the first words out of their mouth is mine, everything's mine. Well, we have to learn to be content with what God has provided. So he says, I've learned to be content, and that he knows how to get along with a lot, and he knew how to get along with a little. He found that he could do all things through Christ that strengthened him. So God will strengthen us. God is faithful. He will provide. So that's a key element of the biblical perspective. Then in generosity, God expects us to be generous. And in Acts 20:35, it says, remember the words of the Lord Jesus, that he himself spoke, is more blessed to give than to receive. And so what God wants us to do with everything that he's given is some of it he wants to go back to him in his kingdom, and some of it he wants us to use for other people. That's why he's given us that. And then he gave it for us and our family to take care of ourselves. But he wants us to be outward focused to him and to other people. So generosity is another key element. We'll talk more about that. And the last element about the perspective is eternity. And that in Mark 8:36, it says, what does it gain a man, or what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and yet forfeit his soul? So we can go after it, and we gain so much stuff, what does it really profit us if we lose our soul? And there's parables of the man that had the barn and he brought in more. And the problem with him was he thought to himself, I'm going to make bigger barns, but he wasn't generous to God. And God is looking at the heart. And so eternity does make a big difference. You look at the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. That's another example of someone who didn't use his earthly wealth to help people, and it didn't help him at all when he passed away. So those are some of the biblical principles. And then what I like to talk about is the financial habits and practices of a steward. And so this is important. It's really like, how do we cultivate a heart, a financial heart, to be a good steward and do these biblical things? And how do we get character? How do we want to be characterized in these areas? Those are questions, and these may be some of the things you want to check. I don't know, but how would other people characterize me in my stewardship? How would I characterize myself? How does God characterize me in the way that I'm being a steward? And so these are activities that we can start to apply in our lives to become better stewards. So, and I did mention there's a lot about the Bible, a lot about money and possessions in the Bible. There's actually about 2,350 verses that deal with money and possession. It's huge. And Jesus said more about money and possessions than he did about heaven and hell. I mean, it's that important of a topic. And so let's talk about each one of these a little bit. So the earn diligently applies to employees and employers. So as an employee, as a good steward, we want to be honest. We want to be truthful. We want to work hard. We want to honor our boss and our company, even if they're not a good boss. I had a few of those in my past. But God calls us to honor them and to do a good job and not, bring things home from work that don't belong to us. We need to be honest at work. And if you're an employer, if you have a small business and you're an employer, he calls on us to, treat our employees fairly, pay them a fair wage, promote them when they're promotable, provide a safe environment for them to work in, provide good tools for them to do the job they're supposed to do. So these principles of stewardship are really about making money and managing money after we have it. So it incorporates that whole part. Then it's how to plan how to use all that we earn. And so what that says is use. It didn't say spend. So I don't want to go there and say, okay, let's all figure out how we can spend, because some of that money we're going to use to invest in. Some of that money we're going to use to give away. So we need to have something in place. And if we don't have a plan for this, what happens is the unplanned. And that's the other thing that happens to people when they find out they're not in a good financial situation. What they finally realize is they didn't plan to be there at all. But it just didn't happen. It was because they didn't have a plan to not have that happen to them. So we want to spend smartly. So we're going to talk about a spending plan. That's kind of code word for budget, but we're going to call it spending plan today. And so we want to have a spending plan, and so when we spend, we're spending according to that spending plan. That will keep us out of trouble. We want to avoid the bondage of debt. In Proverbs 22:7, it says, just as the rich rule over the poor, so the borrower is servant to the lender. And if you don't think that debt is a bondage, just don't pay your bills for a couple months and find out what happens. It was bondage then, it's bondage today. We want to save wisely. So what we want to do is we want to pay our tithe, and I don't like saying pay our tithe, but we want to give our tithe. We want to pay our taxes, and then we want to save for ourselves and our family, and then we want to use the rest for all the other things that happen in life. So we want to have something in our spending plan budget for savings. We want to invest patiently. Investing is a discipline, and sometimes it's a gut-wrenching discipline. Just over the last 4 or 5 years, you all know what I'm talking about. But it is a discipline. This Sound Mind Investing Handbook, again, is a good resource to help you get a handle on that if you're not really, that knowledgeable about investing. But it does take time. That's the thing about investing. It's slow. It may seem slow for a while, but then it starts to build, and we'll talk about that. I have some examples we'll talk about. We want to protect adequately. So what that means is diversification. Diversification is a biblical principle. We'll talk about that when we get to that slide. And also, protecting adequately means how we want to have our money invested. So sometimes, if we need money in the next year or two, we want it invested something that the principal is protected. A savings account, a CD, as terrible as the rates are on CDs, but a CD, because we're going to need that money, and we need that much money, so we don't want to put it in the stock market where it might not be worth that much anymore. It might be worth more, but it might not be worth as much as it was when I put it there. So, so we're going to look at time horizons for how we invest, because that's going to be important. And then giving generously. And what I'd like to say here is, you hear taught about the tithe. Crown, we believe in the tithe. We believe the tithe goes to your church. Okay, but I know not everybody tithes. And so what I encourage people to do is, in your walk as a steward and as your walk in generosity, take where you're at right now and purpose in your heart to build that up. And build that up till you get to the tithe. And then, and we won't get into the theology of Old Testament, New Testament about giving, but there's some people say, in the New Testament, the tithe is just the beginning. Then we get into offerings and giving more than the 10%. So, but right now I'm just encouraging everyone, examine where you're at on your walk of generosity and purpose in your heart, to become more generous. Are there any questions yet? There is going to be some interaction here in a little bit, but it just occurred to me, if there's any questions as I'm going along, just let me know. Okay, so here's that slide you don't have. These are the topics. I'm kind of going now from the biblical principles over into the practical. Okay, so we'll talk, more about that, and we'll have some discussion. You all may have some ideas about some of these topics that I didn't have. I don't have all the answers, but we can share some answers here or ideas. So the first things first is really, again, about having that budget, having the emergency savings. And we'll talk about why you want to do that. Then we want to talk about getting debt free, and that That's really important for the long term, is to get to the point where all you're paying is bills. You don't have any more debt, and we'll talk about doing that. And doing that sooner than later is the best policy. And I'm sure you already know that, but I just want to reemphasize this and give you some ideas on how to do that. We're going to talk about investing your surplus, and that's really when investing comes about. You know, so when we're on a spending plan, if we don't have the $1,000 in emergency savings, then we want to get that first. We're not going to start investing that money right away. We're going to build our savings up to 3 months or 6 months of our salary. You know, they're saying now that for every, if you take your salary, your annual salary, and divide it by 10,000, that should be whatever that number is. That's about the number of months it will take you to find a job that's comparable in pay and skill. Now that was really true before 2007 and 2008. It may even be longer now. It's like 42 to 48 weeks is what it's taken people if they become unemployed or downsize. So we want to have savings so that if that happens, we don't lose our house, we don't lose our car. We can survive that. We can weather that storm. We're going to diversify for safety. We're going to talk about some principles there, and then another topic loosely related to effective money management is also helping to take responsibility with your children is to teach your children, to teach them how to become good stewards, because we're actually raising adults. I mean, they're children. We treat them as children, but we're really raising an adult. So what we want to do is, just with every other biblical principle that we teach, we want to teach them, what does it mean to be a good steward? How do I do that? And some of the things that have already been mentioned this morning in the general session apply in this area to money and possessions as well. So I'll give you some ideas about that. So the first things first, let's see, I've got myself out of whack here. Okay, is to set up an emergency fund with $1,000. Okay, so what that will do for you is, if you have $1,000 in emergency savings, that will cover 90% plus of things that happen that you didn't budget for. So, okay, so we could talk about what things should be in a budget or not, but just given we're just kind of talking right now, what that might mean is, I take my car in to get it inspected, and they tell me I need 4 new tires, and I hadn't budgeted 4 new tires. Okay, well that's $300, $400, $500, depends on your car, how much that's going to cost to get those tires. If you have $1,000 in emergency savings, guess what? You don't have to dig in your wallet, pull out the credit card, put it on the credit card, and start making minimum payments or monthly payments on these tires that are wearing out. You know, you can just buy them, pay cash, and then start building that $1,000 back up. That is a key element in a budget. Now, if you're sitting there and saying, gee, Randy, I think that's really a great idea, but I don't have one, and you don't understand my situation, and there's no way I can get $1,000 put together. Well, yes, there is, okay? But it may be painful. You know, the thing about this whole topic, it's not easy. You know, but then what again in Christianity is easy? You know, we've never been promised that once we got saved that the world would, just be blissful. Okay? And so sometimes this stuff is painful, and I understand that. And so what you may need to do to get that $1,000, it may take some radical life changes. It may mean, getting rid of the cable. It may mean giving up a membership in some club that you belong to. It may mean that you have to go earn some extra money. It may mean that you could go out and actually sell some things that you aren't using anymore and have that money and start funding that $1,000, because that is really essential that you have that. And that's just the basis, because again, you're gonna wherever that account is that has that money in it, you're gonna build that up to 3 months, 6 months. It's just the basis. But at first, you want to have it there so you can quit using the credit cards for those situations. So here, why would you want to have a budget?
He's got a question, the gentleman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I don't mean to interrupt you, but,
No.
okay, what about somebody leaves an inheritance behind? Do you consider that an investment, or how should that be handled?
Okay, let me come back to that. Okay, if you didn't have the third, let me apply it to where we're at. If you don't have $1,000 in the emergency fund, fund that. Okay, if you have other debt, you know, pay the debt off with some of that. You may wanna save more, you know, it's a, you know, that's a very, specific question, so without knowing, and I don't want you to, you know, divulge any of that right now, we can talk later. But, yeah, that's a very good question though, because a lot of times when that happens, that can be, that's actually goes back to teaching children about, you know, when at some point we're all gonna pass away, we're all gonna leave something in our wills to our children, and depending on, you know, how they've been taught about handling money, you know, that money could be gone like that. Money that you worked hard and saved for your entire life, they get that money and bam, you know, it's gone. So that's another, you know, we wanna teach our children how to deal with that. But I'll come back, after I'm done, if I haven't answered your question yet, which I probably won't because I don't know the specifics, but I will give you some ideas to think about and then we can talk through them. Is that okay? Okay. Why would it be a good idea to have a budget?
My wife needs.
Yeah, there's one. You know, you know, there are some good reasons to have a budget.
Well, you have to know where your money's going, and that's a tool to use to see where it's going.
That's
in the
right.
process.
Yeah,
Also
that,
helps you to know how much you need.
right. Okay, well, go ahead.
Keeps you from overspending.
Right. Those are all right answers, you know, and so part of the reason you need a budget is so you can make fact-based decisions instead of emotions. Okay, so now we're getting into, spring's about a month away, you know, fishing season's gonna start up, you know, and so we're in Dick's Sporting Goods store and we're looking at all the fishing gear if you're a fisherman, right? You're looking, you know, and some of that stuff's pretty expensive and pricey, and so we're in there like, wow, that's exactly the lure, that's exactly the reel, that, you know, that's what I really always wanted. I'm just gonna buy it. Well, that's an emotional decision, that's an impulse decision in a lot of cases. It could be a very well thought out decision too. It could have been something you budgeted for, you funded it, go buy it. You know, I'm not telling you to become greedy or, you know, just put all the money in your pocket and never use it. You know, you wanna think about these things though. So instead of, when I see that item, I look at my budget. Did I budget for that at all? Or if I did, do I have enough money in my savings yet to pay for it? So I'm making a fact-based decision instead of emotion. And also, the other thing that happens, even in that same scenario, is, okay, I see it, so I pull out the checkbook. Oh, that's $100. I've got $800 in the checkbook, no problem, I'm gonna buy it. Well, some of that other $800 is for other things that are gonna come up the rest of the month. This is only the 23rd of the month, you know, there's still some more days left. Maybe there's some bills that are gonna come up that need to be paid out of that $800, so you can't look at the checkbook. You can't look in there to make a decision, you look in your budget. And then, the last reason that's been mentioned is to make sure you're spending according to a plan. So, and again, life happens, okay, I'm not idealistic at all, I know life happens. Things come up, we overspend in an area of our budget, in a category. Maybe it's automotive, maybe it's clothing, maybe it's food, maybe it's insurance, you know, maybe it's a medical bill, who knows what it might be. But when I have a budget, I can say, okay, what did that expense do to that category? And I say, okay, now I've exceeded that category by this much money. I've got to get that much money someplace else in my budget out to pay for that. So again, I don't spend more than I make. I mean, that's another bottom line principle. Never spend more than you make. You know, that will solve a lot of problems. But when we use credit cards, we're spending more than we make. And we're presuming on the future to be able to pay for it. So you never want to spend more than you make. And I have a humorous.
Could you teach this course up in Washington?
Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah, they all know. I don't know what happened. It must be the water or something like that. Well, before I do that, And then here's 3 tips to help you develop and maintain a budget. Okay, first of all, if you're married, okay, do this with your wife. Sit down, work on a budget together. You know, what I do know is a lot of husbands and wives don't talk about money. I do know that sometimes husbands and wives, when they do talk about money, it gets into a very heated discussion. You know, the divorce rate in this area is like 56 to 58%. People get married because of money. I mean, this is a huge issue. So what we teach is set goals with your wife. Sit down. Let's set some goals. What are our savings goals? What about, you know, children, if you have children? What about their education? What about buying a home or paying off our home? You know, what are some of our goals? Let's work on those things together. And then when you have your budget and something comes up that's not in your budget or something you want to buy that really isn't part of your goals, you can say, okay, you sit down with your wife and you say, are we going to change our goal? That's fine. I tell people write their goals in pencil, you know, because you may want to erase them. Life changes, you know, so do we change our goal or do we say no to this decision? You know, and so when we have goals, we've agreed on them, now we're working on this together. In Crown, we found they've done surveys, that people have been through some of Crown's studies. The married people's response, 78% of married people say their marriages have improved because of it. And this is a finance class. What's that got to do with anything? You know? But it does. It means a lot. So if you're married, work on that together. Keep it simple. Keep your budget simple. If you like paper and pencil, do it that way. If you like Excel, do it that way. If you want to use Quicken, you know, you can use that. Crown has something called envelopes. If you like that, use that. I'm not here to tell you what to use. But what I am saying, though, is use something that's going to be simple for you to do. And choose which one of the two of you, if you're married, is going to do it. But then whoever's doing it, you know, you want to meet with them like weekly or monthly, whatever you decide, to review everything. How are we doing in the budget? How's this going? Another point here, after you have a budget and you find there's an area you keep overspending in, it may be a heart issue. And my wife and I have sat down with a lot of couples and helped them one-on-one. And I finally got, the Holy Spirit just gave me this one time, that this issue of this overspending is a heart issue. And so what I've started doing when we help people is very first session, we're explaining everything and just getting to know them. I'll tell them, there's going to come a point when in our meetings where my wife's name is Sarah, either Sarah or myself is going to say, make a recommendation to you, and you're going to sit there and say, they don't like me, they think I'm stupid, they think what I've been doing is wrong. You know, I said, if that starts happening, we just hit a heart issue. I want you to realize that right now. You know, because we love you, that's why we're here. I mean, this is volunteer, you know, we're not, you know, so we love you, we're trying to help you. You ask for help, we're here trying to help you. If you start feeling that way, it's probably a heart issue. Now, I'm not gonna say there aren't issues that, big expenses that can come in and can wreak havoc. Okay, I'm not going there at all, but I'm just saying, think about these in terms of heart issues. And one last thing about budgets, when you first do it, I guarantee you it happens every time. You will find some things and you'll say to yourself or your wife, I can't believe we're spending that much money on that. I guarantee it will happen. And I don't know what it'll, could be Starbucks. I don't know. I like Starbucks, so I'm not saying don't go to Starbucks. I'm just saying you will be amazed and surprised.
Gas.
And that's what it's for. Where?
So how about gas?
Gas, that's a necessary one. But let's look at this little video here. This is kind of humorous, but it'll make the point.
Oh, I just can't get these numbers to add up.
Like we're never gonna get out of this hole.
Credit card debt, does it ever end?
Maybe I can help. We sure could use it.
We've tried debt consolidation companies.
We've even taken out loans to help make payments.
Well, you're not the only ones. Did you know millions of Americans live with debt they cannot control? That's why I developed this unique new program for managing your debt. It's called Don't Buy Stuff You Cannot Afford.
see that. If you don't have any money, you should not buy anything. Sounds interesting.
Sounds confusing.
No, honey, this makes a lot of sense. There's a whole section here on how to buy expensive things using money you save.
Give me that. And where would you get this saved money? I tell you where and how in chapter 3.
Okay, but what if I want something but I don't have any money?
You don't buy it.
Well, let's say I don't have enough money to buy something. Should I buy it anyway?
No.
Now I'm really confused.
It's a little confusing at first.
Well, what if you have the money? Can you buy something?
Yes.
Now take the money away. Same story?
Nope. You shouldn't buy stuff when you don't have the money.
I think I got it. I buy something I want, and then hope that I can pay for it, right?
No. You make sure you have money, then you buy it.
Oh, then you buy it. But shouldn't you buy it before you have the money?
No.
Why not?
It's in the book. It's only 1 page long. The advice is priceless and the book is free.
Wow, I like the sound of that.
Yeah, we can put it on our credit card.
So get out of debt now. Write for your free copy of Don't Buy Stuff You Cannot Afford. And if you order now, you'll also receive Seriously, if you don't have the money, don't buy it. Along with a 12-month subscription to Stop Buying Stuff magazine. So order today.
Buy the magazine.
I don't have that to sell downstairs. Okay, so never spend more than you make, right? Never spend if you don't have. Okay, so the next thing is getting debt free. Let's see. Where am I? There we go. Okay, so the first thing is create a plan for getting out of debt. So this isn't your spending plan, and I'm going to show you an example of this form, but you're basically going to list all your credit, all your debt, credit card debt, consumer debt, school loans, medical debt, all this stuff, and I'll show you this thing called a debt snowball. Okay, we're going to go through that in detail, but so, and you will find this really interesting. So let's actually do this right now. Okay, so this is the form that I'm talking about. Stay out of the way here. So what you're going to do is you're going to list your creditors. So those are banks or whatever, credit card companies. Then you're going to list, and this you can get this form on crown.org. It's free. You can download a PDF. They have a lot of forms you can download. They have a lot of calculators you can download or use online. So, but then you're going to put how much you still owe on those different areas. You're going to put the interest rates. You're going to put what if you're making minimum payments, you know, what the payment you're making on it is, or if you're making more than that, you know, what you've decided you're going to pay every month. And then the interest cost from doing that. And then from that, from the payment there and what you're paying interest, you can determine how many payments are left on that. And so in this case, that comes out to be down there at the bottom. Well, can you see that at the bottom? You have it in your hand, it's probably not readable. What it's showing here is of everything that's in this example that's owed, there's $3,667 that's owed. The total amount of these payments here is $130 a month. The total amount of interest that's going to be paid is $1,600, which in this case is about, not quite, but almost half of what the principal amount is. And it's going to take over 10 years, 10 and a half years to pay that off at that rate. Okay, so now what the debt snowball says is take some additional money and apply it in a prescribed way to this situation or your situation or whatever the situation is, and see what happens. Now so that begs the question, where's this extra money going to come from? That's why you need to have the budget. You're going to have to look in your budget and find places where you can pull some money out and have extra money to start paying on these bills. And the way you do this, let's see, I better not, well, you start with the lowest amount. A lot of people say, well, I should start with the highest interest rate. If that's the lowest amount, great. Okay, if you get to a place where you got two amounts that are about the same, yeah, then do the highest interest rate first. Okay, but start with the smallest amount, because this is called a debt snowball. It's like, so you'll visualize, you know, taking a snowball in your hand and standing at the top of the hill and start to roll it, you know, and it keeps getting bigger and keeps getting bigger, and pretty soon it's rolling pretty good, and pretty soon it'll roll by itself, and pretty soon it'll be at the bottom of the hill, and, you know, that's why we call it a debt snowball, because we're gonna do that with these payments. So we're gonna take that extra amount, and we're gonna add it to this lowest amount payment. And when we pay that off, we're gonna take that extra amount, what we were paying on that first thing we just paid off, and add that to the payment of the second thing we're gonna go after. And that's the snowball. And we just keep applying that and applying that. And so watch what happens in this example. In this example, the person found only $50 more per month to add to this. Right now, they're gonna pay $1,600 in interest, and it's gonna take them 10 years to finish paying this off. I'll move this up so you can see it. So with this, the principal amount stayed the same. The payment amount went up $50. It went up to $180 to $130. Their amount of interest they're gonna pay went from $1,600 down to $290. And the whole thing gets paid off in less than 2 years. It's pretty impressive, you know, and that's, again, just applying that principle. So, again, maybe this is something you wanna take home. Maybe this is a stake in the ground. If you haven't been able to figure this out and you're not getting ahead on those bills, you know, use the debt snowball. Find some place where you can get some extra money and start applying it in that way. And there's a calculator on the Crown website that'll do this. It's accelerated debt payoff plan, right there. That's what that ADP means. That's out on their website. You just take your information, plug it in, hit calculate, and it'll show you, you know, what'll happen if you make an accelerated payment. So, is that helpful, or is there any questions about that?
Would that bill be, to start paying off bills, minimum amount of money owed even if they don't have interest, or is it interest driven, or just whatever's the smallest one to start chewing away?
Yeah, so you're saying like if you have a zero interest.
Yeah, on a payment, say $200 or $300, of course you wanna get rid of it.
Right.
Is that more imperative you do it that way instead of one that say 5,000? I
would-
think it's better to go to the bottom.
I would go from the bottom.
But it used to be years ago, they say only do it with the ones that have interest hooked to them, remember all that?
Yeah, but the reason you do, the incentive to do the debt snowball, the way we're talking about,
Make it
is
look
you feel like you're making progress.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of people say, well, I should get rid of the biggest thing first. Well,
You can't get it.
It could take you 5 years or 10 years to get rid of that big one, you know, so don't start there, because you want, you know, we all like reinforcement. Let's not fool ourselves. We all like to see some progress, so, you know, that's why we recommend that.
You really accomplish another thing by doing it that way as well, and that's that if you consistently pay that same amount of money, you know, you've removed one loan or debt, and you're now still spending that money, but on another one, you're not allowing yourself to then also create a new loan or
That's
create
right.
some other debt, because that's unfortunately what happens a lot of times in society. We finish paying off such and such, I finished paying off such and such, let me go buy something
Right,
else.
right.
And by doing it that way, that snowball is gonna work on reducing that debt. It's gonna keep you spending the same amount to reduce your debt.
Right.
But it will also prevent you from creating new debt.
That's right. So like that, we say like that $180 there is because it's like, it's debt repayment, and it's a figure in your budget. And that's staying the same every month till this is all gone. And then when you're done with that, you know, you take that 180 and you start putting in your savings. You know, and we're not saying credit cards are, I'll get to sort of, credit cards are bad. I mean, my wife and I use credit cards and we pay them off at the end of the month. We like getting points and rewards, you know? So the credit cards are not bad. It's if you can't manage them, you know, that's the issue.
Do you consider a mortgage less debt and more investment, or how do you look at a mortgage?
It's both. It is debt. It is debt, and you know, and then when in this example up here, you know, you can put your mortgage in it, and that's probably gonna be the highest figure. So again, when you get done with everything else, these five that were in this example, you could take that 180 and start adding it to your mortgage payment and get your house paid off.
They still do the, correct me if I'm wrong, like your biggest payment should be more than 50% of your income or something along that, not debt to ratio, but you understand my
You
question?
mean the house mortgage?
Yeah, whatever
Yeah.
your biggest payment should be your house, and it should be not less than 50% of your total
40%
income. Is it 40 now?
of your gross.
Okay, so it's 40. Okay. It used to be a lot higher.
There's some more questions.
I'm just curious as to how many people have ever sat down and actually done a budget, or especially sat down with your wife and done one.
Well, we.
I mean, like, just out of this room here.
Oh, okay. You're not asking me. Okay.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, we have a budget.
Does anybody do it on a monthly basis or anything and continue it? I mean, does it?
And see, okay, so we have a half hour. Let me do this. In your budget, you're gonna have these categories. And on Crown's website, you can get these forms. They're called percentage guidelines. Okay, just as you were saying, there's a certain percentage guideline of your net disposable income that should go to food, clothing, automobile, all those different things. So what you do is you for 30 days, you keep track of everything you spend. Everything. And then because right now if I gave you the form, which you can get off Crown, monthly income and expense form, you could estimate your budget right now. I'll guarantee it's about only 80% right. Okay, if you keep track of all your spending for 30 days, that thing will probably be 95% right. It still won't be 100% right. Because me and my wife included, there might be something you forget, until it actually shows. Because you don't spend the same thing every month anyway, right? And some things only come up once every 3 months, every 6 months. You might forget one of those things. So you add all that up, and then what you do is you take your net disposable income, and that's like after your tithe and after taxes. That's what's left. You apply these percentages to that total, and then all you do is you compare that number to your real spending, and you're either going to be over the guideline or under the guideline. See, just keeping track of everything and saying this is what we spend on food isn't good enough, right? These guidelines that have been developed, Crown's developed them, other secular organizations have developed them based on spending habits and patterns of different, so we have like different income levels, number of children, number of people in the family. Those spending percentages are a little bit different. So when you have these percentages, then you apply it, and that's how you figure out whether you're over or under. Because just adding everything up is not going to help, because that's what they call insanity, right? I keep doing the same thing over and over, and I expect a different result, and I don't get it. Okay, I've got to apply these guidelines. And so when I apply them, that'll be the way you'll actually be able to analyze where you're at and where you're overspending. Now, you may have, that's your decision if you want to be over the percentage or under the percentage, but the bottom line is you can't be more than 100% of your income. If you're over, then you really got to start working to get under that. It's subjective. There is no thou shalt, only spend this percentage on this item. Like in your case, if somebody wants to spend 50% on a home, that's their choice, but they've got to figure out somewhere else to get that money. Because that by itself will bust the budget. Does that make sense?
I have a question. I don't know, some people find it really hard to talk about planning their own funeral planning, funeral planning. But how do you put that in your budget,
The funeral planning?
Right.
You can have it in your savings, I mean, in your will, you could designate, that's where that money's gonna come. Are you talking about funding it or actually funding it? I would put it in your budget till you get it funded. And if you wanna fund it over 5 years or, whatever, that's again subjective, but whatever, go figure out, talk to the funeral, the cemetery, find out what that's gonna cost, talk to the funeral home, figure out all those costs, say, I'm gonna pay, I wanna fund that over the next year or 2, 3, whatever it is, divide it by that number of months, and put that figure in your budget, and then start saving it. And then when you've got it totally funded, it can come out of your budget, you know, and then just make sure you keep that money set. Yeah, budget should be flexible like that. And if, you know, when you look at these categories that are out on Crown's website, if you have something else that's not in there, add it, you know? Again, we're not trying to get you in a straitjacket. We're trying to help you. And then planning major expenditures wisely. Okay, so, we're talking like about car payments. You know, how to own a car without having a car payment. It's a novel idea. What you do to do that is, first of all, you keep driving the car you got, you pay it off. As soon as it's paid off, you don't do what my friend did where I used to work. As soon as he paid it off, he'd buy another new one. He'd trade the one in and buy a new one. I said, what do you do that for? He said, well, I figure I'm gonna have a car payment my entire life. I might as well drive a nice car. Okay, you know, have that. Keep driving that car until you get to the point. I don't have an exact figure, but you kind of get a sense like when it's not really worth spending that much money on that car anymore. Because, you know, the trade-in value or the value of the car isn't worth what you're gonna have to spend on it. That might be the time you sell it. Okay, my wife and I, we've been married 41 years. I think we've bought 3 brand new cars our entire 41 years. We always buy used cars. Okay, so, and we always sell our own cars. So I don't go in and trade it in. If there's a car dealer in here, I'm apologize, I'm not trying to do anything. Put it in Craigslist. I tell them as is. I pull out, I keep all my records. Here's my records, you know, all the maintenance I've done. Here's everything I know that's wrong with that car, you know. And I tell them, that's just who I am, you know. I'm not trying to pull the wool over your eyes, right? And that's, you know, I'll sell it. And then I turn around and I look in Craigslist and I find me a car that we want. Usually I do it the other way around first, so I don't minus a car, but, what you want to look for is a car that's 2.5 to 3.5 years old, you know, preferably one car owner, low mileage, and you can find them. Because there are people out there like my friend, you know, I've driven it for 3 years, I don't like the color anymore, I'm getting a new car. You know, you can find, and we've done that over and over, and then we drive them, and we drive them, you know. And so, I sold my car, got some money, took the money I've been saving, that saved money, and I buy the car for cash. But I keep, in my budget, I keep saying, you know, I need to put $250 a month away or whatever for a car. I gotta have it in my budget, because I gotta get it into my savings. You can't take it out of your budget. You're gonna be paying yourself. But the next time you need a car, you're gonna pay cash for it. And that's a great place to be.
I think part of becoming debt free is a change of mindset, a change of way of thinking. In order to get to those principles that you're teaching on now, you gotta get to your mindset versus your friend's mindset.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, I always kid, you know how you say, you know, people trying to keep up with the Joneses. I actually have 2 Joneses on my street. That's their last name. Aaron Jones is like the popular. And I was like, please move out, you know. But yeah, you gotta change your mindset. It is a mindset. It's a stewardship mindset. It's a biblical mindset. It's being faithful with what God gave you, with what God gave you.
One of my friends decided his wife and him were having an anniversary and she wanted a new car. And he said, well, honey, I'll take you on a cruise. So he figured about taking her on a cruise for 10 days was a lot cheaper than buying a new car, and it made her happy, and she drove the car for another year. So he got his money's worth. You know what I'm saying?
That's
it
plan
does
is
make, it's just
expenditure.
strategy. That's right.
Hopefully he had
So
paid
she was
for the
getting
cruise.
bored, you know what I mean, with the car. So
Right.
you just gotta think.
Yeah. It is a mindset change. You know, I mean, this personal story about me, I mean, me and my wife, I mean, some of our friends in church that know us, you know, they would say we're penny pinchers. That's our mindset. We're not penny pinchers, you know, and I'm not saying you want to get characterized by that. You know, I don't like them thinking that, because if they really understood the story, they would know we're not penny pinchers, but, you know, but it's a mindset. It has got to permeate everything. Another way is, you know, to plan your expenditures, refinance your home. You know, that's another good thing. If you haven't done that yet, and interest rates are still low, refinance your home. Use a flexible spending account. You know, if that's available through your employer, you know, that way you're starting to pay some of your medical bills with pre-tax dollars, so that's to your advantage. Explore financial aid options. If you have children, they're gonna be coming up for college somewhere in the future, you know, there's ways to start spending. You know, Virginia has plans. You can start saving for college. Consider long-term care insurance. You know, sooner you buy that, the less expensive it is, but it doesn't make sense really if you're too young. But I mean, you know, you wanna analyze that because that gets very expensive. That can get up to like $100 a day, you know, for that kind of coverage, not for the insurance, but for the, if you need that, what am I trying to think of, the service or whatever. So, you know, that's a way to save money that, it's not gonna come out in what you're gonna leave as an inheritance. Does that make sense? So, and another thing is like plan this year's vacation. So maybe, hopefully he had planned that cruise, but, you know, start saving for this year's vacation. Start saving now for Christmas. You know, so you have that money, and when those things happen, you're paying cash for it. You're not using the credit card, then coming home, and when, you know, when the cruise is over and you're home and the suntan's gone, you know, you're still paying the bill. That's not much fun, so.
I have a question.
Okay.
Is it, you know, for some people, college is not an option because of the expense. What's the difference between taking courses online versus going to regular college? I don't know, that would be cost effective.
Yeah, that would be cost effective. Well, I'll tell you another great idea, and this is what my oldest son did. We have 5 children, and the oldest one went to Richard Bland, which is near Richmond. It's a community college at William and Mary. It's a community college. So for 2 years, he paid $2,000 a year to go. In the second year, he got a scholarship and 2 scholarships. It didn't cost him anything. And then he switched and went to William and Mary. So the first 2 years cost him $4,000. I mean, most colleges are costing $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year for public, private. You know, they're $40,000. So, you know, community college, online college. As long as the course is accredited and will be able, you know, if they at some point say, okay, you know, I want to get the college degree, as long as those credits will transfer, is important. Okay. Now we're going to talk about if getting out of debt is a major goal for you this year, you know, don't do that at the expense of giving. So don't say, okay, I'm tithing, I'm going to take my extra 10%, I'm going to make that part of my debt snowball. You know, in Crown we teach you give while you're getting out of debt. You give while you're investing. You know, you give all the time. Don't rob God. Okay, so saving for future needs. Here's some statistics or some guidelines that I'll give you. Make a priority to save a portion of all that you earn. Here's my guidelines, and I'm getting ready to watch the eyeball and go, I can't believe you said it. You need 10% for your personal savings, and you need 15% for your retirement savings. So now I'm talking 25% of your income, that's disposable income, should be going into savings. Okay, and again, maybe you have to start taking baby steps, and I'm going to show you an example of what's going to happen here, but you want to start taking baby steps to do that. And so
define disposable income. What?
After tithe and taxes.
After tithe, not after mortgage. It's after
The
tithe.
mortgage is part of your disposable income. They call it net spendable income, or disposable income. Net spendable is probably a better term, because the other could be looked at as more discretionary. So here, if your employee matches if you have a 401k and your employee matches it, okay, I'm saying 10% for personal savings. You put 5% in, and they match it, and they put 5%, and there's your 10%. It's only costing you 5%, but you're getting your 10%. You know, so again, think of creative ways that you might make that happen. And again, if you're, you know, just start the process. It's really important, because the sooner you start saving and investing, the sooner that money's it's gonna compound. And I'm gonna show you what happens with compounding here in a slide or two. So there's some savvy consumer ideas. You know, and if there's an insurance agent in the group, apologize too to them, but you know, term insurance is a better deal than whole life. And you can take the difference between term and whole life insurance. Maybe that's where you get the money for the debt snowball. Or maybe that's the money you start using for your savings, you know? So that's just my personal opinion. That's what we did, you know, but I think there's some reasons maybe for whole life, but you know, that's really a decision you have to make in talking with your agent or checking around. Pay attention to seasonal discounts. You know, one of the things I learned is like appliances, whether you get them at Lowe's or Sears or wherever you get them, generally in January and February they go on sale. You know, but a lot of people get around Christmas time, oh, we need a new washing machine or a new dryer, let's get it for Christmas. Well, if you just do it, but put the money in your budget, don't buy it physically until January or February. Don't buy it because you're going to save money. There's other things that come up seasonally. And that's why it's a good idea just to keep track, you know, if there's something you really want, start paying attention to what does it cost, who's got it at different prices, and so that when you see something go on sale, they say it's on sale, you'll know if it's on sale and you'll be able to buy it. So get savvy about things you're going to buy. And something for you that you know is like buying extra non-perishable food or frozen food, household items when they're on sale. You know, don't wait until you're going to make something, you're going to make a chicken dinner and there's no chicken in the freezer or refrigerator and you run up to the grocery store to buy it. You know, if you had bought it when it was on sale and frozen, you can save a lot of money. And, you know, my wife is an expert at this. Some of you guys in here probably have wives that are experts at this. You know, and praise them for that. You know, we need to be praising our wives when they're working on things that are really trying to help the family and us in this area of money and possessions. And a lot of them do a very, very good job of it. So, one last warning on this slide is Larry Burkett, one of our co-founders, said this, so don't blame me, but in his experience, which is a lot more vast than mine, he found that men are the ones in the marriage relationship that bust budgets. Because we like toys, right? We like the fishing boat, we like the new car, we like the country club membership, we like the new fishing rod, we like the new shotgun, you know, we just like things that cost a lot of money. And then we come home and say, hey, wife, look what I got, you know, and she's like, how am I gonna pay for this? You know? So I just you know, think about that.
Another point on what you were saying about the buying stuff when it's on sale, like the food, something my wife and I have talked about is the fewer times you have to go in the store, the less times you're confronted with impulse buys and things that you don't really need. So if you can get it all in one trip and not have to keep going in there, you're less likely to spend frivolously.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, don't tempt yourself.
Something else my wife and I do after 25 years is all of February, and as long as it lasts in March, we eat out of the freezer instead of eating out of the rest. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We don't go buy chicken and fish and we eat because it just stays and then it gets bad and throw it away. So she does it twice a year, and it helps.
Yeah.
It helps your freezer too, so you benefit.
Okay, let's keep going. I think I'm gonna be fine, but okay. Next thing on here is learn about the markets. Okay, and I don't mean just the stock market. So we're now talking about investing. Okay, we're getting into investing. There's a lot of other things you can learn about. The Sound Mind Investing gets into them. I mean, there's stocks, there's bonds, there's foreign exchange, there's futures. And I'm not recommending any of these, I'm just trying to help you understand that there's a lot out there that you can utilize for investments, and if you want to understand them, you want to learn about them, you want to invest in them, and you think that's within your risk tolerance, and you think that's within your budget, have at it, you know, but I'm just saying, learn about these things. We have different investment types. There's stocks, ETFs, mutual funds, options, cash, treasury and corporate bonds, CDs, precious metals, real estate, and commodities are the ones I would say. I mean, there's a lot of things you can invest in. Okay, you know, and so don't limit yourself. Don't take some of those things off the table, but don't do them unless you understand them. You know, so I am saying that. Investments should be part of your spending plan. You already talked about that. You want to evaluate your risk tolerance, and that what the bottom line of that means is, can you sleep at night? You know, you just bought an investment. Are you going to sleep that night, or are you going to wake up in the middle of the night going like, I can't believe I did that? You know, or you bought something and the market goes down and you go like, oh, man, you know, you gotta understand yourself and how you know, and that's important because you can make some bad decisions investment-wise if you don't understand yourself. You need to be able to stomach it. You know, if you wanna make, depending on what you're gonna invest in, you need to be able to stomach it when things don't go right. And I don't mean sell, I mean just hang in there and know what to do, you know, so, and that's a whole subject unto itself. Starting sooner is better than later, and that's because of compounding interest. So you want to establish the right investing mindset. So again, what does that mean? That means what you're comfortable with and what you're knowledgeable of. You know, don't go talk over the fence to your neighbor about what he or she just bought in the stock market yesterday. You know, do the research on your own. Talking heads can get you spinning, they get your stomach upside down, if you run in the grocery store, get Pepto-Bismol, you can do all kinds of things. So, and then you wanna build your investment foundation. And so what that means is, if you're just starting on this path, you know, the first thing, you want safe investments. Cash, CDs pay terrible rates right now, but you're preserving your principal. You're building that up. You also wanna look at what time frame you're gonna need that money back. You know, is this money that I'm not gonna need for 20 years or 30 years or in retirement? Well, then you can be a little more aggressive with that investment. It's something you need next year, like for college or something. I'm gonna need it next year or 2 years from now. You don't want it in the stock market. You want it somewhere where it's gonna preserve the capital and it'll be there when you need it. So that's what part of this investment foundation means. There's, you know, if you talk to financial planners and they're trying to introduce you to these topics, if you don't understand them, they'll draw this pyramid and they'll tell you like, these are your safe and these are we're starting to get risky here, these are getting more risky. These are like really, really risky. These should be like the last thing you think about investing until you build the pyramid up to here. You know, they'll go through things like that with you. So that's what I'm talking about, is getting a firm foundation. So again, we were talking 6 to 9 months of savings. You know, don't invest that 6 to 9 months of savings that you need for that living. You know, you'd want that in a savings account or a CD or someplace where you could get it if you need it. Here's an interesting, it's going to segue into this next one, is one of the most common investing goals is to have enough to live on during retirement. And that's what this next slide is going to, well, there's 2 slides, okay? This I got out of the Richmond Times Dispatch in September of last year. It says individuals, this is the headline, individuals are urged to have 8 times their final annual salary set aside to meet basic income needs in retirement. So 8 times your current salary. And so to do that, what I'm trying to show here on the slide is, because you can't just get 8 times your salary in savings or investment overnight. You got to build on it. So what are the building blocks? Well, and I know I'm looking around the room, some people in here are over 40, I know that, I am, but 2 times your salary by the time you're at age 40. And realize too, your salary's going up over time, so these numbers are moving. You need 4 times by 50, 6 times by 60, and 8 times at 67, assuming that's where you're retired. That'll provide 80% of your pre-retirement income. And these are the latest figures from Fidelity. So it's a Crown. This is what, their experience is showing. So again, one of the stakes in the ground you may want to make after this session and after today is start getting on that path, And now the other thing though too is, okay, if you work at a company that still has a pension, a lot of companies have stopped, some never had them, but some companies have pensions. So if you're involved in a company that has a pension, that can contribute to this 85% number, right? I mean, it doesn't mean you have to have that cash. It means the cash you're going to get from your pension and your other cash can do that for you. So it can be a combination of things here. And the reason it says 85% here is, remember one of the guidelines I had was 15%. You should say 15% for retirement. When you get into retirement, you're going to stop saving 15% for retirement because you're in retirement. So you really only need 85%. that make sense? Okay. So here's the power of compounding interest. Now this shows three people, A, B, and C, and starting at age 21, then person B starts at 31, and person C starts at 41. And you can go ahead and read the numbers while I'm talking, but this is based on getting a 10% return in the market, okay? Here's some statistics. The historic return on the stock market since 1929, which was the beginning of the Great Depression, was 8.8%. Since 1932, it was 11.1. Since 87, it's been 10.6. Now, we get to the tech bubble in 99, it's only 3.4% from 99 till now. Since 2002, it was 7.2. In the last 5 years, it's only been 2.6. But last year, in 2012, it was back up, it was 10.1. So, and a lot of places that I was researching this, they use this 10% number. So, you know, at first you may say, well, you're crazy, because you can't do that right now. Well, you can. I mean, if you start looking at, you know, some resources.
The thing that bothers me, I've heard that before, though, that doesn't take into account the fees that are charged by the investment sources and all that. I mean, I think we as Christians ought to use honest numbers, and honest numbers are what you net, not, you know,
well,
quoting statistics.
Usually in a okay, I agree with your concept. A lot of times, though, you will find the returns that are given are after expenses. And if you're going to a financial planner and you're paying the financial planner, okay, that's exactly what you're talking about. But if I buy a mutual fund directly, say at a discount brokerage firm, the numbers they're giving me are after their expenses. So that is true.
Fees.
Here's Kiplinger's. This is another good resource, or Money Magazine, or Yahoo Online. This is the latest edition. Pump Up Your Plan: 7 Steps to Boost Your Retirement Savings. So there's good books like this. This is all part of developing that mindset we're talking about. Get informed. Another one is the American Association of Individual Investors. This is their latest edition. The top mutual funds. There's ways to get your information. Okay, so you just need to be aware of those. But in this case, what happened is this person A, by age 67, just putting $1,000 a year in savings every year, ends up with 10% with over $1 million because of the compounding. This person B, by the time they get to 67, have invested 37, but they're at 388,000. So you see the difference that 10 years makes. That's why I'm saying sooner is better than later. The amount of time, the amount you're earning on it, and the amount you're saving is what determines all this. Just those three things: time, amount, and interest, or interest or growth. And then for person C that waited till 41 to start the 1,000, then they put in 27,000 and they have 137,000. So again, I always show you this to show you how compounding works, and also to help you start setting gauges of what you're going to need to do. And then, so if you're making $40,000 a year, and if you put 15% of that into retirement savings, that would mean $6,000 a year. So if you took the $6,000 and plugged it in here, and this is a calculator on Crown's website, you can do this. You plug $6,000 a year in here and run that down, then this number's going to change. So, I used 1,000 because then you can kind of gauge that. Just multiply a little bit, and you'll probably get a figure. So, diversifying for safety. Okay. You want to manage your portfolio by being diversified in the Bible. When it talks in Ecclesiastes 11:2, there's two translations there. Give portions to 7, yes to 8, for you do not know what disaster may come upon the land. And the Living Bible is divide your investments among many places, for you do not know what risks might lie ahead. So even the Bible admonishes us to be diversified. So what does that mean? That means, I listed a bunch of different kind of classes of assets that you can invest in. Maybe you want to invest in several of those, maybe real estate and some money in the stock market and some in a CD, yada, yada, Again, that's very personal. It depends on your needs and how you can fund those things, but, you want to be thinking about that. You want to diversify, because the last thing you want to do is be like in a tech bubble, be 100% invested in .com companies and have that happen to you. Now, like in 2007 and 8, it hit everything. I don't think you could have, I don't know how you could have diversified away from that. There's probably some way, but it hit everything. It hit stocks, it hit bonds, it hit everything. But that was bad. Hopefully we won't have that again, but as long as men are trying to figure this out, it might happen again. But, but you want to be diversified. Then you want to develop a long-term plan. So again, it may take you a while to build this diversification. So day one, maybe it's a CD. Maybe then further out it's this and that. Okay. I'm right at time, so I'm holding you up for your lunch. Give me 2 minutes and I'll be done. Teach your children. Model spending and handling money wisely. Talk to them about it. Tell them, study the Bible. See what it says about some of these issues of dealing with money, and sit down and teach them. I have some materials at my table there for children. It's for ages 5 through 7, 8 through 12, and then teenagers. Get one of those books, go through it with them. A teenager can learn how to budget, and they need to. Again, we're raising adults. We need to be teaching them these things. Learning experiences and making money. There's no better way to teach somebody to value money than make them work for it. So just have your, and I don't have time to get into that right now, but there's ways to do that. And then teach them how to manage the money they do have. These are some of the resources that I've been mentioning. We have the handbook, First Down Line Investing, the newsletter website. At the table down there, I have this creating a spending plan. It's a 90-minute video with a workbook. It goes through step by step how to do that. It's $28. And if you buy it today, then you're not going to pay tax or shipping or anything on it. So, eliminating debt. That's another 90-minute video DVD that you can get. Takes you through the whole debt snowball process in detail. We have a biblical financial study, which is a 10-week study that you can do in your church. You're going to learn all these biblical principles that I talked about at first. And that is very, very important to people in your congregation, because if their heart doesn't get right, financial transactions and budgeting and all that, if your heart isn't right, it usually doesn't last. And a lot of times, if it does last, it makes people more materialistic. They need to understand what God says. And some of these resources are on that handout that I gave you. We have stuff for people if you have a small business. We have the business by the book. I have a copy of that downstairs. You can take a look at it. And Career Direct is a career assessment that can be used as an educational assessment for people in high school, and then for people that have been in the workplace, it can be used as an occupational assessment. So if you're interested in that, and that's really an effective way to plan your spending in the future with your children, is if they know what God's really designed them to be, or who they are, they'll probably pick something in college that they're going to like, they're going to enjoy, they're going to do well in the job, they're going to be passionate about it, they're going to be creative, and it'll save you a lot of money because they'll get out in 4 years instead of 6. Okay, well, we've asked a lot of questions, but I'm done. And
Taking in steps.
Yeah, let's do that quick.
Well, men, thanks for listening. I trust this message has provided practical encouragement to you in your journey with Christ. Please visit noblewarriors.org to learn more about how Noble Warriors works to help churches reach and build men. God bless you, friend.